You hit on something else that's really interesting, and I know that you talked about this in the class that I take with you, um, and you give a really lovely explanation that I couldn't re-articulate. Can you talk a little bit about um, why the Bible doesn't endorse slavery, or why
Mm,
it's being
mm,
misinterpreted? Because that
yes.
seems like a very critical passage to understand.
Yes, I'm happy to talk about that. There are some laws in the Old Testament that some English translations use the word slave or slavery in the laws, and I believe that's deeply misleading.
Hmm.
Because for most of us in the US context, when we hear slavery, we think of the transatlantic slave trade and the
Yes, of course.
antebellum South. And we're talking about the buying and selling of human beings as property for permanent possession, and you can do with them whatever you want, and you force them to work for you and you don't owe them anything. This is never endorsed by the biblical text. So, for example, in Exodus 21, there are some laws about servants. I'm looking at the NIV here, and the NIV heading says Hebrew servants. And so I think that's a better term for it, because what happens when you read all of the laws in Exodus, so they span from 20 to 23, chapters 20 to 23. All of these laws taken as a whole have all kinds of guardrails in place to make sure that no one is being exploited. So there's already a law saying human trafficking is prohibited. There's a very serious law saying if you take advantage of a widow or someone who's fatherless, you are incurring the most stringent wrath of God. And so you can't traffic in slaves. You can't take advantage of someone. You can't charge interest to your fellow Hebrew.
Hmm.
So there's all kinds of safety nets in place or guardrails. You're not allowed to harvest your fields every year. The seventh year you have to leave it fallow, and it's being left fallow. That is, things can just grow on their own, but you don't get to harvest it, so that the needy people in your community can go and take whatever grows naturally during that year. This is true of fruit trees, of olives, of grapevines, of any kind of crop. So there's a built in mechanism or a built in safety net for anyone who's vulnerable in the community. If that safety net fails and there's still someone who is unable to work their own land and provide for their own needs, and they are in debt and unable to pay their debt, then there is this institution of indentured servitude, which is voluntary and temporary. And it's strictly regulated. And that's what we're looking at in Exodus 20. It says, if you buy a Hebrew servant, he is to serve you for 6 years. And the word buy is misleading, I think, here, because it's about hiring. Someone is offering himself freely to you as a laborer to pay off a debt over the course of 6 years. That's what it is, and it's the upper limit, that's 6 years. No one can pay off a debt for longer than that. Like, you actually have to forgive the rest of it, which would discourage the wealthy from allowing the poor to just rack up lots of debt. Right? It's another safety, uh, like a guardrail in place. But then it says, in the seventh year he shall go free without paying anything. So you can't make it a situation like many forms of modern day debt slavery, where someone comes to work for an owner, say a brick maker, and somehow their living expenses are always more than what they make making bricks, and so their debt actually grows rather than shrinks over the course of their service, so they can never get free. This is quite common in prostitution. It's quite common in brick slavery, say in India. That's not allowed. They get to go free when it's time to go. There's nothing to pay. Then some people get really troubled by verse 7, because it says, if a man sells his daughter as a servant, she is not to go free as male servants do, which just sounds all wrong. Why is a man selling his daughter? Why does she not get to go free like the men do? And so, again, we need to slow down, consider the cultural context. Every marriage relationship in the ancient world involves the exchange of wealth between two families, and every marriage is arranged by the woman's father with the groom and his family. And so this is not about selling a daughter into slavery. It's about a man arranging a place for his daughter, but in this case, presumably, the man is so impoverished that he doesn't have a dowry to send with her. And so there's still wealth that passes hands from the groom's family. They'll still pay a bride price, but there's no dowry going with her. So it's a unidirectional wealth transfer instead of both directions. And the reason she can't go free as male servants do is because she is marrying into the family. She is sexually involved with the family, either with the man or with his son, not both. And that's also really clear. The man is arranging for her to come for himself or for his son. But if it's for his son, then he has to treat her like a daughter, which means she's off limits sexually. So there's no sex slavery here. She's marrying into the family, and that's why she can't go free. You can't just use her sexually for 6 years and then send her home. And now she's unmarriageable. She's actually a permanent member of the family, and she has to be treated well.